Right, hello and welcome to Influence Marketing 101. And also, I'm going to do a section today on what I think the future of digital marketing is. How is everyone? You okay? Do you manage to get down here okay? Fantastic. One thing I think I would like, which I'd find very useful, I suppose, is to gauge a level of expertise in the audience. So if you could put your hands up if you've had, say, 2-3 years digital experience. No? 5+ years digital experience? Okay, perfect. Some of the things I'm going to touch on are going to be quite advanced, so I'll try, and please stop me if you've got any questions or if you'd like me to explain anything, and that'll be fine. So firstly about me, my name's Steve Locke. I'm the product manager for LinkDex. I'm also the current co-chair for Sempo, so we're the global search and social media trade body. And also this is what my garden looks like sometimes when the Twins Club comes round. So firstly about LinkDex, we're an award-winning SaaS marketing platform where we're basically well known within the industry for doing a lot of very innovative work. One of the areas that we've picked up awards for is particularly in one part of our product called networks. So I'm going to basically give you guys some insights into some of the R&D that we've done behind that and why we're kind of really excited about some of the work that we do in this area. We also work with the likes of people like Money Supermarket, Razorfish, LBI, and we're fortunate enough to have some amazing digital marketers that we work with. So it also gives us a very unique perspective on the industry, which is hopefully why you'll find this talk interesting. So first of all, how familiar are you guys with influence marketing? Is it something anyone's spent much time looking at? Influence marketing, I think, is very much a buzzword. I think it can be very difficult to understand sometimes, and quite often people will obsess over things like clout scores, but it's still very much a very kind of new and evolving area online. So this is an example of one of the Google customer journeys, which I would recommend thoroughly checking out their research, because they're doing a lot of work into trying to understand the customer journey that people have, and they also try and map out all of the different touch points. I think one of the most common things which I discuss internally is I'll have conversations along the lines of, hey, we've sponsored a conference, we've done an event, how much business have we got from that event? And one of the things which I thoroughly believe in basically is multi-touch attribution modeling. So this is kind of some of the work that Google have done, where you can basically see that when you make a decision to convert online, it's not about one single event that's happened. I think it's very much multi-touch. There's lots of different touch points, with a lot of them commonly being reading blogs, reviews, and social channels. And one of the things I believe very strongly is that content is kind of very much at the heart of all of the changes that we're seeing in digital at the moment. I think one of the most common themes that we see at the moment is that it's very, very important to integrate all of your digital channels, and some of the best marketers that we're working with at the moment, they'll work really hard to integrate PR, social media, SEO, and their creative channels and their paid channels, and get them all working together. And we believe very much in a concept called organic marketing. So that's basically getting all of the different channels where you don't have to pay for every single click, and basically getting those channels working together. And I've had some amazing talks with one of our favourite clients, the guys at PropellerNet, and this is something they were very early adopters with. So we've seen them build sector-based teams, where most agencies 3 years ago, they would maybe have an SEO team, an analytics team, and a PR team. For a long time they've had sector-based teams. So for example, they'll have a travel-based team which will have someone who's good at search, someone who's good at analytics, someone that's good at UX, someone that's good at PR, and all those guys will basically work as one team. So their services have been very integrated for a long time. Also, some of the big brands that we're speaking to at the moment, it's a very, very common frustration for them at the moment, where they'll have different teams or very much be working in different silos, which is very frustrating. So one of the things when thinking about influence marketing is also, I guess, looking at the state of the industry, because this helps people, I think, to understand the size of the opportunity. One of the things which is key to influence marketing is basically analytics, creating feedback loops, and measurement, and kind of making that a really core concept in your organisation. This is one of the most sobering stats that I've seen for a very long time. So this is from McKinsey, where they believe there could be as many as 190,000 people as a skills shortage by 2018 in the US. So that's going to be people with business analytics skills, web analytics skills, and people which can basically work with data. So that's kind of happening for a number of reasons. It's basically this industry and the opportunity to work with data is mushrooming. I think a lot of people's jobs are becoming much more technical. And I think that data and analytics is basically one of the biggest opportunities that there is. And also it's a really big problem, because another core concept to influence marketing is also putting innovation at the heart of what you do. So you'll obviously be doing a lot of social listening. You'll be trying to get insights from looking at what's happening on social channels. And it's important that you use that data to basically innovate and to drive your business forward. And you can see again from PricewaterhouseCoopers, 1 in 3 CEOs at the moment are concerned that skills shortages, and I would predict that a lot of those would be data related, are kind of impacting their ability to innovate at the moment. And also we're working in an industry in digital at the moment which really is moving at breakneck speed. I can remember a period around 5 or so years ago where a lot of people could get away with having a very strong understanding of marketing fundamentals, whereas now people are expected to know about things like third-party retargeting, about EU cookie law, marketing automation. It's getting generally a lot more technical and a lot harder to keep up with, and that's without even touching on obviously understanding things like the Google algorithm updates, which are again becoming increasingly more important for everyone in the digital space. And is the big opportunity influence? I think one of the things that I personally love about influence and influence marketing is it's a really, really elegant way to kind of understand how all of the different digital channels work together. And looking at the definition of influence, initially I wasn't a fan of the actual term, and I think for 2 main reasons. I think there's a lot of negative connotations when people think about influence, and also think there's a lot of kind of buzz and hype around influence marketing at the moment. But as you can see here, this is the Oxford English Dictionary. Influence is the capacity to have an effect on the character development or behaviour of someone or something. So ultimately, you're basically encouraging someone to maybe look at a product or service or buy a product and service which they wouldn't have otherwise done. And that sounds a lot like marketing to me. And again, this is the WOMA definition, the ability to cause or contribute to a change in opinion or behaviour. So this is basically just a very, very high level way, I believe, of looking at marketing. And just touching on influence theory, has anyone come across the work of Malcolm Gladwell at all? Right. Malcolm Gladwell is very, very interesting because his standout work was the tipping point in regards to influence. And what's very, very interesting about this body of work is it still tends to be one of the most influential pieces of work in terms of the way that a lot of agencies perceive influence. And it's this idea of basically the law of the few. So it's an idea that there's a very, very small number of people have a very, very disproportionately high amount of influence over a community. And one of the main case studies which this is based on was Hush Puppies, where Malcolm Gladwell estimated that basically they saw a 5,000% increase in sales, and their company was kind of brought back from the brink from basically a small group of hipsters and celebrities in New York. So it's this idea that because a very small number of influential people started wearing Hush Puppy shoes, it then somehow trickled through and exploded the growth of the company. Now, a lot of people basically disagree with Malcolm Gladwell. I think a lot of his theories are interesting, but I think there's a danger that it can oversimplify the way that we look at influence. So one of the main people which disagrees with Malcolm Gladwell famously is a guy called Duncan Watts. Now, Duncan Watts is one of the top network theorists in the world. He's doing some absolutely amazing work, including trying to recreate and prove the theories around the 6 degrees of separation. Something which he basically strongly disagrees with is it's not so much how influential the people are. It's how easy it is to influence the people, which are basically sharing your ideas. So he's got some amazingly elegant ways of trying to explain the way that things go viral, where he explains it very much as a forest fire, where it's basically not so important. The flame isn't the important part. It's basically having the environment with a propensity to have something shared widely. And I think you can really kind of see that with things like Gangnam Style, where there's some fairly strong evidence that suggests that the celebrities weren't particularly influential. They did help to kick and boost the campaign, but it was obviously lots of people ultimately sharing them amongst their friends. Now, if I was to encourage any research or encourage you to go and buy any books on this topic, I guess it would be Paul Adams and a fantastic piece of work he did called Grouped. So this is insights that have been driven based on the Facebook data set. And what's very, very fascinating about Paul Adams' work is that obviously Facebook have a lot of data to play with, and the insights are very, very compelling based on that. And I think one of the things that we've seen from this piece of work is how important strong ties are. So this is the concept that I think when a lot of people look at social media, they might imagine it as one huge sea of people. And ultimately, a lot of the work that Paul Adams has done basically contradicts that, where it's not like a huge sea of people, it's much like a lot of small ponds. So those small ponds will contain people that are maybe your close friends and family, and one of the keys to influence is basically these small, strong ties that you have. So for example, if you have a brother-in-law that's very, very good with computers, who's one of your strong ties, the chances are you'll ask him for technical advice, and you will take that advice and you'll be disproportionately influenced versus, say, reading an article in The Guardian written by someone that you don't know. So this stuff's definitely very, very important, and you can kind of see that this resonates with a lot of the work that Facebook does, by the way that they will try and identify your friends, for example, liking products and services. That creates an almost serendipity type effect, which is also very core to a lot of the things that Google are trying to do with their user experience. And finally, another chap which is very influential on us at LinkDex is a chap called Phillip Sheldrake. So again, this book is not the easiest book that I've ever read, but I think that Phillip Sheldrake's done an incredible job at really kind of pinning down what the future of digital might look like. So at the very heart of his concepts, it's based around the holy grail of integrated marketing communications. So it's the idea of really combining all of your marketing activities and your PR activities, but he looks at this through the lens of influence. So it also covers a lot of other areas which are often ignored. So things like customer service, things like account management, are really, really important, particularly as everything gets more social. And some of the work that he's done to help simplify this is really interesting. So he's come up with this concept of the 6 influence flows. So that's when considering influence marketing, I think it's important not to just try and look at people on Twitter and try and narrow them down to one arbitrary score, because that argument falls down very quickly. The reason being, you can't apply one number to one person, because for starters they're in many different networks. So you might be massively influential in one network online and not in another. And with the 6 influence flows, this kind of really breaks down how organisations should be approaching influence. So you can basically see that flows 1, 2 and 3, you can basically see that that's how you influence your target audience, how your target audience influences you, and also your target influence, how they influence themselves about your brand. So that could be seen as reputation management. And you can see the other flows, 4, 5 and 6, are the exact opposite. So that's in regards to your competitors. So that's how are your competitors influencing your target audience? How's your target audience influencing them? So for example, extracting ideas from social listening and communities for product R&D is one classic example. And how do you think the reputation management is for your competitors. I would also potentially argue that there's a seventh influence flow, which would be the influence between yourselves and your competition as well. And this touches on another fantastic idea, where this is a great book I read recently called Idea Stormers. So one of the big things with looking at influence through a broader lens is basically understanding the opportunity for innovation. And one of the core concepts of this book is that you should basically be encouraging innovation within your businesses, and it's kind of, you should set up teams and task forces to make sure that you're generating more higher quality ideas than your competitors. And if you can do that on a consistent basis, and I see this as a similar kind of area to companies like IBM, I know talk about kind of constant innovation. Their big message internally to their staff is think. Also, people like Google have done this as well with things like 20% time, which is obviously famous for keeping them always very innovative. And you can see with these businesses it's really obviously helped them. So I think influence in organisations, it's really important if you start to look at this area to understand that both influence and an influence team should flow through all sections of an organisation. So it'd be sensible to set up a multidisciplinary team which can work across all the departments to basically make sure that these kind of things are being addressed. And it's not just a case of you've got a small siloed social media team which is collecting data on your competitors, which then isn't really feeding back into the business properly. And I think some of the pitfalls of influence, I think we've touched on them quickly already, but the two big things which concern me is influence marketing is very much a buzzword. I think there's quite a lot of bad information in the wild, which isn't tied directly back to network science, where there's research that's been going on in this area for well over 1,000 years, whereas obviously some of these new metrics which try and analyse how influential people are online and try and crunch that down into one score. When you look at some of the data from guys like Duncan Watts and some of these other practitioners and some of the work that's being done at Facebook, it just simply doesn't work like that. So topical authority is something that we're incredibly interested in at LinkDex. We're also follow the work very closely, obviously from Bing and Google, as we know that this is another area that they look very, very closely at. And one of the things that we find fascinating about topical authority is that we know that these organisations are basically looking at people online, and there's been a very, very recent shift. I think we're really starting to see things move towards authorship and towards entity extraction, where the search engines are no longer looking at trying to match your keywords to documents. They're trying to basically match your keywords through to concepts which are built on people, and they're built on actually extracting meaning from the documents, trying to really understand what they are talking about. And one of the things that we think is important with topical authority, particularly in terms of networks, is there are some very, very clear signals where you can see that the most authoritative people online will tend to be very passionate. They'll share a lot of things in the industry. They won't be biased. They'll share a lot of different things from a lot of different sources. They'll tend to write for the most authoritative sources in their industry. They'll also tend to write on a wide range of sources. And we think that the search engines very much have wanted to go in this direction for a long time. And also another key concept is obviously back on the point where people are in multiple networks. You might be massively authoritative for one keyword or for one small section of an industry, but not authoritative in another. So I think these are all really kind of core themes, and this is really where the future of search and influence is going. And back to influence theory, I think it's very easy to, I guess, beat up some of Malcolm Gladwell's theories because there's so much scientific evidence which goes against them. But something I would say is, if there are people within your industry that have 100,000 followers on Twitter, you definitely shouldn't ignore them, because although they might not have a disproportionate amount of influence, they definitely have a disproportionate amount of reach, and there's a good chance that they'll also really help you with organic search campaigns, because the search engines will probably also see them as authoritative. So looking at a key influencer definition, so that's a person or group of people who possess greater than average potential to influence due to attributes such as the frequency of communication, personal persuasiveness, or size and centrality to a social network, among others. So I think that has basically really nailed a lot of the R&D that we've done internally, and we kind of strongly believe with this statement. So this is an example of, this is a screenshot from our networks product. So one of the things that we've found, and I feel that we're only just starting to scratch the surface with network science, is that we really are seeing it resonate with a lot of the work from Paul Adams, which is based on the Facebook data. So the important thing is not looking at the network as a whole, but it's basically looking at small clusters where you can really get the insight. Twitter has a fantastic API which is incredibly open, and many of the signals that you get from Twitter can be used as proxies to see who's influencing who's communicating with each other. And we found some incredible insights from using this with clients. So some of the most obvious ones is you take an approach like this versus, say, an Excel document with a list of bloggers that you want to email. You can actually see the relationships between people. So you can see potentially who the most important people are within a network. But what you can also see as well very much is you can see insights such as bridges. So I might be able to see a very influential journalist which is communicating regularly and is good friends with one of my friends, in which case I can ask him for an introduction. Whereas working in a world of spreadsheets, to be honest, a lot of people would have probably just blanket email everyone without being able to gain these kind of insights. So I think touching on the future of marketing, I think leveraging science is definitely really important. I think when you look at the skills shortage, which McKinsey's predicting, which is going to be absolutely huge, I think it's clear that a lot of our jobs are getting a lot more technical, a lot more scientific, and I think marketers need to do one of two things. They either need to build teams which have more analysts and more people that understand science and data, or they need to basically go and learn these skills themselves. And I think the big opportunities are web analytics, network science, and obviously data science. I think it's really important as well to break down the silos. So this is something that we touched on. Something that we're discussing frequently with our clients is basically the direction that they want to go in. And obviously there have been massive changes in digital marketing, particularly since the Penguin update from Google. One of the big industry trends that we're seeing is it's so important to integrate all of your different teams together to execute integrated campaigns. I think the rise of the technical marketer is really important as well, because I think that if we're living in this world where everything's going to become a lot more integrated, I think the kings of this world are going to be people which will act as linchpins, who are both very strong in terms of marketing but also have very strong technical skills, because it's going to take those kind of people to lead teams which are going to be working in so many different marketing areas. I think something that is fascinating is guys like Facebook and Google, from what I hear through the grapevine, are incredibly biased towards hiring marketers with technical skills. So I guess on a personal level, if you're looking to develop your careers, I think web analytics is massive, as is working with data and making sure you've got a balance of marketing and technical skills. And also another trend I'm seeing is the rise of the expert generalist. These guys are slightly different to technical marketers, although they probably also have a lot of technical skills. But these guys are incredibly curious. So not only will they have technical skills and marketing skills, but you'll probably find that at some point they've worked in a startup, or they have a startup mentality, but you'll find they'll be incredibly curious and they'll develop skills in all kinds of different areas, including much of the many diverse areas that we've discussed while looking at influence. I think it definitely is all about building the right team. I touched on the story with PropellerNet, who are one of our clients who I spoke to recently this week, and I was really impressed with some of the work that they've done when I found out that for over 3 years they'd basically been building sector-based teams that were basically doing exactly some of the things that I'm recommending in this talk. So they were basically blending these teams together with all the different skill sets, even though it was really hard, because they knew it would give their clients much more integrated results, basically, and a lot less frustration. And I think tips that I've got are to hire people that are passionate. I think that's particularly important with digital. I think if you're not passionate, I think the speed of the industry and the amount of things that you have to learn, it's really, really difficult if you're not incredibly passionate about digital, so that's important. I think also hiring people that love learning. I think in a world where you could get away with just the marketing basics around 5 years ago to a world where you're having to understand web analytics, retargeting, marketing automation, and a myriad of other themes, I think that's really, really important. And I think some other tips that I've got for the future are some of the implications of Google Hummingbird, which I've touched on. I think one of the things which is fascinating about this update is I think we're now starting to reach a tipping point where Google really isn't trying to match search queries with documents. It's trying to actually extract entities, people, locations. It's trying to really understand what web pages mean. And I also believe they're making a massive play towards mobile. I think that Google are extremely scared of mobile because it threatens to erode their market share that they have at the moment. I think a lot of this links to their knowledge graph and to voice search, which I'm expecting a very, very big play on. And one of the fascinating things is it also looks like they're now trying to explode their knowledge graph using unsupervised machine learning. So this means the knowledge graph results I'm expecting to become much more prominent over the next 12 months. And I think the implications of this are massive, because Google aren't trying to help you find web pages to answer your queries. More and more they're going to try and answer your queries on the actual Google results page, which is massive, because it goes from people searching and clicking through their site to people spending a lot more time on Google, basically. I think the rise of mobile, there was a very, very big brand that I was speaking to recently where they were absolutely gobsmacked to find, looking at 2013, their predicted mobile traffic was around 30%, which was in line with industry averages, and it actually looks like they've received 50% of their traffic this year from mobile, so that's obviously absolutely massive, and yet there's still so many websites that don't bother having a mobile-friendly version or aren't coded in a responsive way. So I think that HTML5 and building responsive websites is something that people really need to do now, as is also making sure you're not ignoring things like structured data. I think the consumer journey, can I just have a show of hands? Are people familiar with some of the research that Google's been doing on this, like the zero moment of truth? I would thoroughly recommend basically checking this out as soon as possible. They're doing a lot of research into basically leveraging learning how people are converting online. And I think finally, hope you've enjoyed my talk. We've actually just released a completely free content marketing ebook, which is available from linkdex.com, called Rethink Your Content Marketing, where we've actually managed to get the likes of Avinash Kushak, Joe Paluzzi, Lee Odden, and a whole ton of amazing authors to basically contribute to this free ebook. So I thoroughly recommend downloading it. Thanks for listening, and please feel free to connect.